your themes. You dabble in dark subjects, isolation, suicide, religion. Talk on those things.
Isolation, I think that's a very obvious theme in the story, but it's really taking a seemingly normal person and putting them through the throes, seeing how they would react to it, and how eventually, given enough time, they unravel themselves. So it's in these moments of silence that we can really get to introspect. And the character in the story had a bit too much time to introspect. In isolation, that is. Normally, introspection is a good thing, but this sort of turns it on its head to the point where if you look inside of yourself too much, and this just goes back to the title of the story. So does it steer back? He was looking into darkness this entire time, literally and figuratively. Remember, he is out in space. His only light is from the earth and the moon. Of course, the sun, but the reflection of the moon and the earth. He's looking into darkness this entire time, not only physically, but inside of his mind, because he had no one to talk to except himself.
Yeah.
So it's really exposing the dangers of isolation as well, which is really, it's a really scary thought nowadays. When the pandemic hit, everyone had to be home. They couldn't talk to their loved ones physically. They couldn't be there with them, and they were sort of stuck. They had to look inside themselves for once.
Perhaps it was a slip of the tongue just now, which I like to milk right now. When you said it was the writer, and then you said the character. How much of the writer is inside there? In the writer.
Okay, I like that very much. Yeah, the character, I just say that whenever you write, you put a part of you in it. So for me, it was exploring that part of myself, adventured into isolation, self-reflection, and really looking at these difficult topics like suicide. It's putting a magnifying glass to it and looking, why? Why is this? Why would you be driven to such a point? So I wanted to explore those parts of myself. So I thought, maybe I can use another vessel, such as the character, to explore these themes as well. And there's a certain aspect of humanity that you do portray when you create these characters. You take parts of yourself, you put them on the page or the Word document.
There are a number of writers who have committed suicide. Exceptional writers.
Sylvia Plath, my inspiration, has sadly committed suicide.
Our own Edgar Mittelholzer from Berbice. He self-immolated himself, lighting himself a fire, after writing between 3 novels. There are quite a few that I did a study on. I was writing on the subject of suicide. Yeah. And you talk about inspiration again, Sylvia Pat. Let's talk about your poetry now. You can read a piece and let's talk about it.
Sure. Should I read the whole thing?
Depends how long it is. You decide.
It's not that long.
Well, good.
I don't wanna sell it short. I wanna paint the entire picture. Okay. So it's titled Blood and Oil, and I'll let it speak for itself. You'll tell me what you think. Although you
I
probably
think it's a
already
yeah.
well,
It's a
you'll
popular
get to
piece,
hear
I
it
think.
again. We used to pray that one day things could change, but now our hands are stained and it won't wash away. Growing beneath the soil, like a cruel cancer, it toils and it spoils, causing death and disaster, drowning everything in oil. Our hands are red from the wars fought. How can we sleep in bed with such a thought dwelling in our head? We try to wash away this oil and blood, but it's here to stay, buried in the mud like the dead. Our blood runs coal. It coats our arms, our heads to our toes, smothering our soul in this black gold. There is oil in our veins, in our hearts steel, when we lose humanity and forget how to feel. We dig and dig, be it hands or spade, trying to win big, but only digging a grave. I feel like I can't breathe. I feel like my future has been taken away from me, and like the world has been consumed by greed. But despite all the white lies, there is a faint light drawing us out from the night. Tell me, when you die, who do you want to leave? Is it the tree, fame, or family? Because it seems like the only things that'll be left are death and misery, all for money. And
I wouldn't attempt to get in it. I mean, you can look at it at the surface, and you can look below. I see you've got a beautiful phrase here, the beauty of writing. I'm listening to that. I'm listening to the performance of that piece, and I can see patterns and figures and structures.
yes,
It must take me a long time to carve that.
it does. Sometimes certain patterns like stick out,
Hmm.
like a sore thumb. But other times you have to go the extra mile to sort of forge out that pattern. It's like learning. People, we have in our brain neurons, and our ability to learn is influenced by these connections of these neurons. So it's the same thing when you write. You're sort of joining these points together until it's a cohesive structure.
And so far, you've done quite well joining the dots together. You're right here. Congratulations, man. That
Thank
was
you.
great. Yeah. You also have a vision. Huh. I mean, you've got to talk about your vision there, because you're multitasking.
Right.
You're a young person. You're multitasking. A whole lot of experience behind you. And learning. But then you have a vision for Guyanese literature, Caribbean literature. Talk about this vision, and how do you intend to put it into action?
Well, my vision is that people in the Caribbean can use writing as an outlet. Because writing, in my biography, I wrote this part. Writing is very complex, but at the same time, it's so very simple.
Yeah.
Because you can put words on a paper that are in your head. They can use it as an outlet for self-reflection on one part, which self-reflection tends to give logic to certain quote-unquote illogical things in our lives. You know, we might do something and not directly understand why we did it, or we might feel something and not know why we're feeling it. But when you take the time to dig deeper, you keep digging, you eventually will find some amount of resolution. Granted, closure is rare. Full closure is rare, but you do get closer and closer to finding an answer. You know.
Self-realization.
Exactly.
Yeah. There's a phrase here, I'm looking for it. Ever expanding world that we call ourselves. Talk about this ever expanding world that we call ourselves.
Right. So as I mentioned, your brain, how we learn is based on our neurons. Right? As we develop, there's a certain point in our lives where our neurons are not so much keen on like exploding in density, but they're more keen on forming connections with each other. So when we expand as a person, we learn new things and we form more neural connections. So people are constantly evolving. We are constantly changing, going into new mental environments as well as physical environments. So we have a sort of mental landscape. So I want you to picture a vast spread. You have this landscape, you have your mountains, you have rivers, flowing lakes. You can kind of picture that as your mind. So now as you continue walking through this landscape, you're going to see more and more things. Now you'll remember you saw the mountains and you saw the lake, but at some point you might find a hut in this mental landscape. So you can see the hut, you can choose to ignore it, or you can go into it, right? So it sort of encapsulates a person, their mind. It's sort of a feedback loop. The more you learn, the more your mental landscape grows, and then when your mental landscape grows, the more you learn. Going back to our hut, you can go into it and you can see things that you might not have known about before. You go in there and you see some peculiar shapes on the table. You wonder, what are these things, right? And you sort of fit that in. So the more you go into your mind, the more that landscape grows. It gets bigger in all three directions.
Let me show this experience to you. Walking in the park one day, this huge tree, full blossom, yellow. And it came to me that as I walked towards the tree, something was happening. You know? Like a movie camera, panning and then focusing on it. And as I walked closer, that was happening in my mind. And as I move away from the tree, it was another experience. And I felt at that time to write some poetry.
Yes, like that's exactly how it is. It could be the smallest things. They just tick that part of your brain, and you feel like writing. So I'd say it's human nature to write, to even speak. But of course, when you write, you get more time to sort of formulate your thoughts out. You know, the fact that you can appreciate the beauty of this tree, this full blossom, it's expanding your mental.
As I walk, yeah.
It expands your mind. And reading does the same thing too, because you're sort of living out these things in your own way. You know, you might read someone's work and you might think that's beautiful in this way, and then another person reads it and they read it, they have a similar experience that's constant, but certain parts of it are different. So it really depends on you when you read and you write. When you read, it was a fiery day. I felt like I was going to melt. So I might have an image of me going from an ice cube into water. Some people may have a different perception of that too.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.